Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the Security Bread podcast. I'm Giorgio, and this is a little project of mine where I invite cool people to have a nice chat about some of the recent security news, with the goal of learning something in the process, and hopefully it could help you as well. Watching or listening to this, learn something. Um, so I have a very special guest tonight, and before I let her, join the streaming, I just want to remind everyone: you're maybe watching this live on YouTube, but this will be also recorded and re-uploaded on, Spotify or Apple Podcast, in case you prefer just the audio. And if you appreciate this, episode or project in any way, just consider letting me know, subscribing to the YouTube channel, maybe sharing this with a friend, or maybe, and that's the most helpful thing, leaving us a comment, just with your opinion about what we're going to talk about, or if you want to just leave us a feedback. That said, I'm gonna let Georgia uh, join us. Can you hear us? No, she can't. Let's see if we can fix this. Little technical problem here. Let's see if Georgia can join us again. Okay, she's back.
That was
Can you hear
weird.
me?
Like as soon as I came on, it just went blank and said something went wrong. Hopefully, we won't have that issue again. Hopefully, the only issue
That's
we'll have is that the kittens will show up. So we may have kittens show up on the screen. They do whatever they want. So they are hanging around. So you may see some kittens. But other than that, hopefully that's
they
the last
they are really
glitch.
appreciated. They are really
So happy to
appreciated.
be here with you guys today.
Okay. Would you
Yeah.
like to introduce yourself?
Okay. I hope this doesn't have any more problems. I'm Georgia Weidman, and I'm probably best known as the author of Penetration Testing: A Hands-On Introduction to Hacking. I'm also a researcher in the mobile space. I teach at some universities. On a day-to-day basis, I do pen testing, I do some research, I do training at various conferences. But yeah, probably the book is the thing I'm most known for. So I'm happy to be here today. I had planned to hopefully have my office ready, but it's still covered in plastic being painted. So we're doing this the old school way, and you get to be in bed with Georgia, so to speak.
That's completely fine. We are, let's say, I'm used to technical problems, so and especially we I love cats, so that's perfect. And I just wanted to say, I read your book myself years ago, right now, and I very grateful for you to to have brought that. So thank you for that. Um,
You
oh,
kitten.
hi. We have a little
Yeah, I
friend
have
in here.
twins. Twins. Hi.
That's great.
Kitty.
So in case you're just listening to this, you're missing a very nice cat on the screen. So you maybe should consider to jump on YouTube next time.
She
That
wants to
said,
get on my keyboard though. She loves to get on the keyboard and she loves to eat chords.
well, I'm afraid to say that's your problem, not ours. For us, that's completely okay. Cool. So I think we can start. I collected, or I should say, we collected a bunch of news from the last week, and I would like to share my screen in a second. Here we go. So here's the first news for tonight, or today, in case maybe you're in a different time zone. So the first one, it's been a while since we last spoke about GitHub in this podcast, but it's been frequently here in previous episodes that you can find on YouTube. So what happened here is that a very, let's say, nice and interesting campaign affected or just targeted GitHub users. Basically, what it was identified by some security researchers is that thousands of different comments were identified, all of which were suggesting a fix to some kind of issue to various different GitHub repositories without really any context, just suggest, oh, I know how to fix your issue. I've seen this before. We actually have I think, yes, a screenshot from one of those comments. And what the issue or the fix was suggesting, it was to download an executable or just a zip file containing an executable from some storage provider, and saying, oh, you just have to execute that and your issue will be gone. Something that from security practitioners should trigger some kind of red flags, right? Because you don't fix code problems just randomly executing stuff. But still, apparently, there were some people that fell for it. And just the fact that the campaign was so big with so many comments in there, the news, the article here talks about tens of thousands of those. Just let me think that it was actually effective, or it was just useful for the attackers in some way. Now I want to stop there and see what were your first thoughts, Georgia, when reading this, because it can be something that very very easy, very not very fancy, not very technical, but still apparently much effective. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think this is the quintessential example of where social engineering is going. I think we focus much too hard on just email for our simulated phishing, our social awareness training, and the attackers have moved on. Yes, they're still using email, but they're also using text message. They're using QR codes. They're using social media messengers like Twitter/XDM, Facebook Messenger, things like this on GitHub. Anywhere where someone can put a link that people can click is a place that they're going to be social engineered. So I think that people need to be vigilant, not just with their email, but everywhere that they're going to be interacting with, potential bad actors. And this is an example of that people may download this. You always want to be careful, specifically around credentials, anything that wants you to give up your credentials. And we have another story about one-time passwords in a little while, but anything that's asking about credentials or anything that wants you to download or install something. I mean, a lot of times, like when I click on an ad on Facebook, it gives me a pop-up and it says, oh, you have malware on your phone, you must install this app. And it's obviously, some sort of spyware or malware, and this is very similar. So, be very careful, particularly, definitely be careful with any link, but anything that is dealing with credentials or is having you download and install something on your computer or your phone or any other device, you want to be especially vigilant about that.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. I actually didn't thought about that. The fact that during those security awareness trainings, we usually focus just on the email because, of course,
Mhm.
corporate wise, we focus so much on emails, which is still a thing. We definitely have to be aware of that. But still, email is surely not the only medium for this kind of social engineering attacks. It's not only SMS or messages, but something I like this, just public comments on a I I I would probably call GitHub some kind of social media, right? Or just
Yeah.
a collaborating platform. We should be aware of this, and well, it should not surprise us because of course, users of GitHub are developers, and developers are building the software that enables companies to run their businesses, right? So the other topic that I had in mind was what if a developer working with for a company is also maybe doing some open source software, right? Which we usually think it's definitely a good thing, right? we want people to contribute to the community, but at the same time, they can maybe be affected by something like this, right? And I just forgot to mention the malware that it was inside the zip file here was actually an info stealer or spyware, so something that is going to collect information from the infected device. So what if the victim, so the developer that is infected, has some credentials to other repositories or credentials to other corporate environments? So that's the thing. After you're hit by something like this, anything potentially on your device, any credential you have saved somewhere could be potentially exfiltrated. Uh, do you think every time something like this happens, we need to change everything in the company? Is that something that can be done really, really every time? I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, I think it's good for a company to do test runs on things like this and have, a policy in place. I think just because something like this came out, if you don't have any proof that anybody in your organization has been affected, we don't necessarily need to, go into disaster mode. But I would like to see companies have a procedure in place, automated as much as they can, for scenarios like this. But I totally agree with you that, a lot of companies, and I like to see companies doing this, wanting their employees to be building open source, contributing to open source. I mean, what came to mind for me is a previous employer. Actually, we were trying to get an OWASP mobile application security project advocate status. And part of that was people needed to contribute to the OWASP repositories on GitHub with their company email address. So it didn't count that we had done it ourselves. It needed to be like at company.com. So, I mean, in that case in particular, like they needed to be logged into their corporate account, talking to GitHub, talking to
Mm.
repositories that weren't just our own. So they might come across something like this, certainly. So I think it is definitely something that companies should be aware of. If there's any, you know, proof or any employee, turns this in that they did, fall victim to this, definitely we would want to put our procedures in place for dealing with a live, ransomware or spyware attack. But I think the biggest thing was just having a procedure in place, regardless of whether you get hit by a particular attack, knowing that, if that does happen, what you're going to do. Everybody knows who they need to report to, what they're expected to do in that situation, should it come about.
Well, very interesting. You touched two different points there that I'm interested in. So first one, you kind of mentioned that if you require or for any reason, encourage your developers or just your colleagues, collaborators to do something like do open source project on GitHub, that public platform, external platform actually becomes part of your let's say attack surface in a kind of way, right? Because those same users are potentially your own users that can be targeted and affected by multiple different attacks like the one that we're talking about. So that's the first thing. And it's not only about GitHub. Of course, it could be involving anything really that is externally to your platform. And we could probably jump on the supply chain thing that is so common nowadays, where an attacker, instead of directly targeting you and your company, actually decides to find out a way through an external partner or an external platform that is maybe vulnerable in some way. The other thing, which I also think is very important, is the topic where that you touched about, preparing a procedure and a playbook, a list of different processes that you are going to use in case you're affected by any kind of incident, really, right? You should probably and potentially consider all of the different kind of risks your company faces. But that's a very good thing. I think that's something that the very major companies are probably doing right now. Even though I think it's one of the basic stuffs, right? Any company
Mhm.
will suffer a data breach at some point, right? any company can actually be
Mhm.
affected. So anyone should do it. How, in your like experience, is that common? Like, do you encounter many companies with something like that are ready, or something like that tested, or is something that we really need to work on as an industry?
Unfortunately, in my experience, I think that really it is people who are very advanced and mature in their security program that have this and have like disseminated awareness and have you know practiced. I think a lot of people they have it in their security policies somewhere, and but they maybe read it when they got it, and but they definitely haven't practiced, and a lot of places really don't have anything formal at all. One of the things I do, one of the many hats that I wear is I do some like fractional and virtual CISO work, Chief Information Security Officer for the acronym. And that's definitely something that I've helped companies with is get their policies in place so they're not just like sitting in a binder somewhere, so that people are aware of them. Your everyday employee knows like who they need to report to if they see an incident. People understand like what the policies are if there is an active attack. And also that they're policies that are actually actionable. I mean, a lot of policies that you just kind of like download, or your you know IT provider makes for you, or MSSP. A lot of them are not really actionable. They're just a lot of fancy words. Um, somebody would not be able to read them and then know what they needed to do. So yeah, a lot of what I do in that role is try to make policies that are understandable and actionable and are things you can actually do, as opposed to like when in the event of this we do blah blah blah. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people like them to like kind of sound like legally jargony so they can turn them into their insurance provider, but I'm really more about things that we can actually do and understand.
Yeah, I see, let's say, two different challenges in there, right? First of all, as you said, the guide itself needs to be actionable, needs to be designed with the purpose to be used at some point, not just to write it so that I have it. And the other thing, I once again, just from my experience, the thing is that even though you have something that is potentially actionable, you still have to practice it, right?
Mhm.
First of all, because companies change, people change, organization change. So something that was actionable, I don't know, 6 months ago, maybe is not anymore nowadays. So you really need to test it and potentially change it and adapt it. And at the same time, once again, maybe the guide and the procedure is perfect. It's the best thing you ever seen. But once again, if you don't use it, and in the event of an incident, which is a stressful moment, right? You need to study it for the first time. You're gonna lose so much time that maybe at some point you will just drop it and do whatever you want or you can. So it's
Yeah.
not really useful, as long, in my opinion, as long as you don't practice it. So there are two levels there, or of maturity. Don't you think so?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And what actually comes to mind when you say that is, I realize this was a while ago now, but they made a movie and everything with Tom Hanks. The Miracle on the Hudson, when they flew the plane into the Hudson. Actually,
Right.
the co-pilot had just gone through the training. He'd just done a refresher course, and he knew exactly where in his manual he needed to go to. And when you're talking like seconds difference, that could have turned out very differently had it not just turned out that he had just had that refresher training and knew exactly where to go to in his book. So I mean, I think it's an extreme example. We're very rarely flying airplanes in security, but I think that kind of illustrates the point that we do need to be practiced at what we're going to do in the event of an incident.
That's actually, I know it's extreme as an example, right? But still, I think it's a very good point. I mean, I've recently been in a course where we did something like this, right? Preparing for an incident and knowing what to do during an incident, right? And something that my instructor was saying was that during a very stressful situation, even though you have a special and incredibly good procedure written down, it's almost every time you have to adapt, right? Because in that specific event, there's
Mhm.
something very tiny and very specific that is not really was not really considered when you wrote the procedure. So at some point you still have to adapt, but the good thing is to have the procedure, and then of course being able to try to comply with the procedure as much as possible and adapt where you can't, uh, which is better than just not having any procedure at all, not knowing anything, and improvising every time. That's, it's still preferable to have something as a baseline, let's say, and then try to, let's say, navigate on top of it, which there's always something that we didn't consider, unfortunately. But once you go through the incident, then you should have that little lesson learned, time where you want to understand what you didn't prepare for, and maybe once again update your procedure so the next time you'll be a little more prepared, maybe not perfectly, but still a little more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So I think that was it for this news. I would like to jump to the next one if you agree with this.
Okay, sounds
And
good.
that next news, from the Krebson security blog, which I always suggest to everyone, is talking about something that it's not really recent. What was recent was the fact that the people behind a pretty famous, let's say, website aiming to bypass multi-factor authentication, known as Otp.agency, were actually arrested. Okay. Um, so the news itself, it's about the arrest of the people. But what I would like to focus on a little bit is the service itself. So once again, this was a website that was, let's say, helping people to bypass that multi-factor authentication. So what are we talking about? Uh, Nowadays it's pretty common that you don't only have your username and password to access some kind of platform. You also have a third or potentially more factor, which could be an OTP. So I think it's a one-time password, right? Something
Mhm.
that maybe you receive as an SMS or you generate through an app, something that it's in addition to your password. Now we very often say that MFA should be always enabled, which is a very game changer when it comes to security, which is true, let's say. Still, I don't think everyone in the industry, and of course outside the industry, knows that it's not perfect. There are still ways to to bypass that as well, and this platform here is just one of those examples. Basically what uh, happened, it's not happening anymore on this platform specifically, was that someone access to this platform possibly paid uh, the the developers a specific sum, and then what they did was providing the credentials that were probably already stolen from somewhere else in another data breach or something. And what was happening was that the owner of the credentials that were stolen received a phone call, so something automated, potentially with the, I'm just assuming here because it's not specified, but I'm assuming some kind of automated robotic voice telling you, oh, you know what, you had suffered a data breach or some kind of threat, and we need you to double check, your credentials. So we're gonna send you an OTP, and I want you to type it in. So the thing was that this kind of service is basically kind of doing a man in the middle thing, or a kind of man in the middle, where is really providing the real credentials to the real service, and then is just forwarding, the forwarding is just make the real platform send the OTP to the real owner, and then asking the owner to give them the OTP just to secure the environment. Something that once again is we're back to the social engineering thing, right? We're just misleading the victim in order to provide themselves the keys to the kingdom. But it is a thing, right? This is not the only service out there like this. And I actually some time ago was pretty famous an open source software that was kind of doing something like this, and it was used also for you know um, simulations or penetration testing activities. So the thing is that with the right amount of money and the right knowledge, not technical knowledge, just knowledge about the availability of these services, also MFA could be potentially bypassed. Yeah, once again, I want to hear your first thoughts when you read this. Is this something that I know it's not new for you, but do you think is that common yet nowadays?
Um, I mean, I think it's becoming more common as, more people are using, multi-factor. I mean, this is interesting in that, I mean, a lot of them, would only work against like just the text message. And I mean, for that reason, like the authenticator apps are considered a bit more secure. So like I did a talk at RSA, I think in 2019, or I guess it was 2020, right before we got shut down. Because RSA was basically how it got here to the
Right.
US. But I did a talk where, we were on the device, we, put a malicious app on there, got root level access, and was started grabbing stuff out of the keychain to get the MFA. So I mean, nothing's foolproof. But I mean, really, I always use the analogy like you don't have to be faster than a bear, you just have to be faster than the guy next to you. So if your security is better than, all the other people in your sector, chances are, it's somebody else in your sector that's going to get hit. So, I mean, I would definitely always tell people to use multi-factor where it's available. And I encourage developers to make it available on all of their sites. But I mean, really the thing that sticks out to me about this is that, yeah, they're just like calling people and asking them for the password. It's kind of no tech hacking. I mean, you should never discredit, like, if you're having trouble getting in, like, if you're doing a pin test and you're having trouble getting in, just asking somebody can get you pretty far. I think back to a pin test like early in my career, we were on site, they were doing pretty good. We hadn't really, gotten the keys to the kingdom. So, the guy I was working with, this was back in like CD days, had a CD and like, it was like, we really need to turn this thing in. Like, I don't know, your network like won't let us like call out or whatever. Is there any way we can just like pull up this spreadsheet on your computer? And this was the IT guy. He had admin access. Oh, he wanted to be helpful. So he was like, yeah, sure. He didn't know why we were there. So yeah, we pull up, the spreadsheet. Oh, and it's like, it needs to run a macro. We're like, yeah, we need to run that. Dude does it for us. We're admin. That's it. All we did was ask. So, I mean, this just kind of reminds me of that. So, I mean, from the user perspective, I mean, pretty much any like bank or organization, like, the general policy is, they say we will never ask you for your credentials. If you get a call like that, it's not us, hang up. Same thing with the one-time passwords. I mean, you just have to think that, if you're dealing with a reputable organization, they're not going to call you and ask you for that. So, you always need to keep that in mind. I know, especially when they bring up like you've been in a breach, your adrenaline starts going, we start making mistakes. That's why they do that. But you just always want to keep in mind that, you're never going to get asked for your credentials, including one-time passwords, by, a legitimate organization.
Yeah, but absolutely. That's the real, or at least most of the time, it's the real red flag in there. So if you're not really expecting a call or someone to reach out to you, 99% of the time, that's going to be a fake, that's going to be a fraud, that's going to be a scam of some type. And even though you are expecting someone, in the moment they're asking you for some sensitive information, always consider, what, if you really need it, I'll drop the call and call the official number, right?
Yes.
Because I want
Yeah.
to be sure that I'm talking with the right person. And still,
Right. I was gonna add that, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, you always have that right, no matter how, like, if it's like the organization that employs you and they're like saying they need your social security number, they need your password or not. whatnot. You always have the right, always the right like setup security wise is you always what you're told to do. Say, I'm gonna call you back on the official number. You hang up the call the known number that you have for the security team or the HR team or what have you, and verify that that's really them because most of the time it's not.
And you know what? You just made me think about something, right? Now we're thinking about something related to a bank or something like that, right? Where consumers are targeted by this kind of attacks. But I had this conversation recently with some friends, and they were for a pretty big company, so an established global corporate, and this thing happens where the IT guy calls them, and for any reason, they ask you, oh, we have your old laptop. I need your password because I need to format the laptop to drop it somewhere, and that's actually legit, right? It happened multiple
Mhm.
times, and it's really the IT that needs the password, or otherwise they cannot format the. I think it was a Mac device, and they don't really know. They cannot really manage this centrally, so they have to manually go in and open the laptop and format them. But it could be something like an internal threat where someone
Mhm.
is just spoofing the IT guy, or just
Oh.
faking to be the help desk or the IT person, and asking you for your OTP, your password, something that when it comes to IT, we're usually pretty open to do, right? And that
Mhm.
could be a thing. That could be a thing. And at the same time, I don't know, many people are saying to their IT, what? I'm gonna stop the call and call you back, or maybe I'll just use another way to send in a protected way, maybe my password, because that should not be done. And still, if you want to go on and work, very often you have to do something that is not very secure most of the time. I did it myself in certain scenarios. So and I'm a security practitioner, so I'm expecting pretty much anyone to be in this kind of scenarios at some point in their career. um
Yeah, I've definitely run into things like that, like particularly like BitLocker keys. Like it's a old laptop, I sent it back. They don't have the BitLocker key. It's like I don't have the BitLocker key to it. I never had admin on the thing. But yeah, I mean, I definitely know that those situations happen and they are legit. But when I run into a situation like that, I always do make sure that that people know that you're teaching people bad habits by doing
right.
this. I get like we're in a particular scenario here where we actually need them, but we should not be in the habit of asking people for their password because it opens them up to attack. So yeah, you're right. Sometimes it is like a legitimate thing. They lost a BitLocker key or whatever, and they need to reformat the laptop to give it to the new person. So I mean, there are legitimate reasons why this would happen, but it trains people to do the wrong thing. So it might be worth just buying new laptops, honestly.
No, you hit a very good point, right? The worst thing is that you're teaching them to trust similar scenarios where they really shouldn't,
Hmm.
and that's very
Right.
bad. The other thing before we jump into the next news is that you mentioned, the fact that during, once again, fantastic activities, red teaming engagement, and simulations, it happens that you sometimes can, do the social engineering thing, right? Really find your way. Also, just asking for the information you need, or just for that key to get access to the data. And I'm wondering, few years ago, this was very like fancy. You could see companies offering red teaming activities with no scope. Where the pen tester could really do whatever they wanted to get in. And I'm wondering, is this still a thing? Is it very common? Do you see it not only being offered but being requested by customers? Because once again, I'm not into the offensive part of it, right? So it could be just a lack of my knowledge. But in my opinion, big corporates really struggle to sign something that really says, "Oh, you can do everything you want," right?
Right.
And I'm wondering, do you see it differently?
I mean, it is relatively rare. I mean, on the one hand, most organizations aren't really going to get a lot out of the red teaming exercise. Honestly, many organizations don't get much out of a pen test. They really just need a vulnerability scan because people are getting in with like missing patches, default passwords, basic phishing. So even a pen test is ultimately a waste of money for them because they haven't even got the basics down. I mean, red teaming is taking it to, an even higher level. In order for like an open scope red team exercise like that to really be useful for you, you need to be at a point where a pen tester, a regular pen test, which is much cheaper, would not be able to get in. And that's most organizations, that's not true. So for most organizations, they one really don't need that service. That said, I know that, I mean, particularly in the financial services industry, they are really forward looking. I know that there are some that do the full scope red team. There are some shops that, they say they're red teaming all the time. Somehow I doubt it. Because like you said, there's not many people who are going to sign off on that. I do know that there are some shops that do get some red teaming clients, but I think if you looked underneath and really looked into their books, they're probably doing a lot of pen tests and vulnerability scans even as well, just because there's not a lot of people. And I really feel like the biggest thing that there's not a lot of people that need it. And I think you'd be doing a company a disservice if you sold them a full scope red team when
Hmm.
they need a vulnerability scan or even a pen test. So I think that's the biggest thing is that most people, their security is not at the level that they need that service.
Well, you actually that's what was so good. I would like to jump into this topic for the rest of the for the rest of the episode, but we unfortunately don't have so much time. I just wondering, you're so right. Like that's a very high level or a very let's say deep kind of service, which I would expect to be needed, and that's the thing, the need for this kind of service by, I don't know, maybe companies or just organization treating top secret services or something like that, where you really need a very high bar when it comes to security. And at the same time, if you are lacking the basics, like if you don't know what to do or if you will not do anything with that final report, right? If you're not gonna fix anything at the end, you're gonna just waste money. That's the thing, right?
Absolutely.
You could probably use the same amount of money because once again, this is a very high hand service, which will probably cost a decent sum. You could probably spend it wisely, more wisely, in the very basic stuff that you're missing. I don't know if many people in the industry will agree with that, especially red teamers. But that's an interesting topic.
I mean, I know red teamers that I have worked with where, their specialty is red team where, I didn't make this up. I got this from listening to them that, if they get a customer approach them about red teaming and what they really need is a vulnerability scanner, a pen test, that's what they're going to push them to buy. You know, yeah, they'll make more money off the red team, but it'll be kind of a waste because they'll get in with a missing patch or a default password. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think to your point, yeah, the money is much better spent on things that they actually need. And absolutely, you brought up a good point, like actually using the report. I mean, I try when I do my pen testing, I always try to get an idea of like, why are we doing this? Is it, and a lot of people it is, they just want to check a box. They have like somebody in the chain somewhere who says they have to do a pen test. They're never going to read that report. They're going to, sign off on it and send it to them. And that's fine. That keeps the lights on. But I mean, I definitely, much prefer to work with a client that really is interested in improving their security. And I always try to include like short term fixes as well as kind of a more overarching long term fix. If, say, they're missing a patch, if I say apply this patch and they do it, when I come back next year, everything that's come out is not going to be patched. The real answer is we need to develop a patch management program so these things are getting caught, getting tested, getting put in place. hopefully there won't be any CrowdStrike incidences because that set us back a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely something to think about. Definitely, what does your customer want to get out of this assessment? And you're going to get customers who are just checking a box. That's just the nature of the industry. A lot of people only do it for regulatory reasons. They don't care. But yeah, then you're gonna get some clients who really want to like grow their security program and really like want to learn from what you're doing, and they're a joy to work with. So but you have to do the other ones to feed yourself.
No, that's a very good point. Once again, this is a very interesting topic, but I'm afraid I'm gonna drop it and jump to the last news for today.
Fair enough.
Um, So I just thought. So just for your information, I usually leave what I think it's kind of or the most interesting or the biggest thing for the end of the episode, right? And I just thought this was a little controversial, a little tricky to talk about, and that's the reason why it's the last one. So what happened is that in the city of Columbus in Ohio, they suffered what I believe was a ransomware attack. Yes, that was pretty big. It froze the entire network for some time, and even worse, a total of I see here. I'm just reading 6.5 terabytes of data was eventually exfiltrated. And we mentioned this multiple times during this podcast, but if you don't know, exfiltration is now a big part. It's always there when it comes to ransomware attacks. Because either you care about the encrypted data or you care about the exfiltration, the exfiltrated data, and then you decide to maybe pay the ransom. And what happened was that apparently the city didn't pay the ransom, and the attackers decided to publish part of the data. The article says 45% of the stolen data, which is still more than 3 terabytes of data, which is pretty big. And now here comes the juicy stuff. What's happening is that even though the data was there available, yeah, maybe on the dark web, maybe a little let's say tricky to access, it was there. And it was containing a lot of sensitive information, a lot of personal information from a long time ago, even. And even though that was real, the mayor of the city publicly said, oh, the data is not really that sensitive. It's not a big deal. No, there are no big concerns. You people have to be um, you know just chill because there's no problem, right? Well, someone didn't really agree with that because a security researcher, it's not specified if they're from that city, and that's why they did this. But still, they actually went in that dark web website, downloaded the data itself, and we don't know if all of it or just a part of it, just to understand what was in there. But still, they verified there was actually a lot of important data in there. Personal identifiable data, and something related to past crimes and so on and so forth. So definitely something that people should be aware and concerned about when it's exposed. And this security researcher actually told the media, that no, what the major said was not real. There are some important information, and they did this little, personal war that I actually called, it's a kind of whistleblowing in a way, right? It's not the classic whistleblowing thing we are used to think about, but still, someone decides to talk with the public about something that an organization is not really doing in the best ethical way. Now, to finish up the story, the thing was that in the very end, the city of Columbus, decided to take a lawsuit uh, after the security researcher, and there's currently um, this lawsuit going on, targeting him. So now there's the thing. The lawsuit was because the security researcher accessed the stolen data, something that they should probably not do because it's still data that is not owned by them, and actually spread that kind of data outside the dark website. And that's the reason why they were sued. And at the same time, they were really doing a service for the public, right? Because they are making aware people about their data being stolen and published. So here's the thing, I know it's difficult to say who was right here, but I would like to have this little conversation with you. Like, once again, what are your first thoughts when it comes to this?
I mean, I guess I see everybody's point, but I mean, if they were saying that, which it seems they did say that the dump was unusable, it was encrypted or corrupted, and this researcher was showing that that was incorrect. Um, I mean, I think that that's like a valuable service. Personally, I'm always on the side of the researcher. I think back to like, Weave, who is, I guess, best known as a troll, but most famous for the public like AT&T stuff, that was on a public website, but he ended up getting in trouble for that. I mean, I'm always on the side of the researcher. But I know that the law does not necessarily agree with me. We see when I was coming up in the industry, WikiLeaks was really big. A lot of the people involved with that have served major prison sentences. But I think, researchers pushing those boundaries, I mean, that makes us ultimately more secure. I mean, I prefer organizations, and when I advise organizations, I tell them set up a official bug bounty program, where, pretty much everything's in scope, and we reward researchers. We give them at least a t-shirt and mention on our website. Hopefully we can do like something through like Bug Crowd or HackerOne and even give them money. I know this is a little different than that, and this is a like local government, but I'm always on the side of the researcher, personally.
Well, it's tricky. I'm always, I'm kind of in the middle. Like, I know, someone really has to run this kind of battles, right? Because if we, let's say, want a change as as a society, as an industry globally, we someone needs to push those boundaries, because we
Mhm.
know, uh, uh, you know the reason why they did it was actually more than ethical, right? It was in the interest in the interest of the people out there. And at the same time, I kind of agree that, if someone steals your information and publish somewhere, you should not be, let's say, allowed to just take the data and you know spread it anywhere, because they already stole it. So what's the
Right.
point? They actually, I know, I read somewhere in the article that at some point the researcher was thinking or declaring that they will build up a website so anyone could research the data that was stolen. I don't personally, just personally, I don't personally agree with that kind of thing, right? Make it more accessible. I'm not sure that's a very great idea. You can just, you can have your point, just, saying that, it's there, it's on dark web, it's on this link, right? And it is sensitive. But at the same time, making something that was stolen more accessible to anyone out there, included other attackers, potentially. So spreading the problem even more, I don't know if that's a good choice. But yeah, it's a tricky one, right?
Yeah, I kind of see. I read that more as he was gonna set up like a site, kind of like Have I Been Pwned, where it wouldn't necessarily reveal the data, but you'd be able to look yourself up, kind of thing. Which I would agree that that would be important. Like if individual citizens' information had been leaked in this. I mean, I also saw that one of the things they were worried about was that like it had information about undercover cops and things like that. So I mean, I think there definitely is a fine line there. I don't think necessarily that it should be made like public, like on a non-dark website. But I could see something like a Have I Been Pwned or hooking it up to Have I Been Pwned's database, where people could look up and see whether their own things had been leaked. I mean, I what this makes me think of, and it's not nearly on the same level, but I used to work for a company that had a really bad idea for T-shirts for Black Hat. Really gross sexual stuff.
Okay.
Not where we are in our industry. What was much better for our industry like 15, 20 years ago. And I kind of had my own whistleblower moment, shall we say. Went to HR with it. Didn't work out so great for me. I kind of ended up in this researcher's but I'm harming the company when really what I'm trying to do is keep the company from harming itself. But
Well,
it
yeah.
definitely didn't work out that great for me. It was not well received. So I understand that having the best intentions, be it for something like that, like in terms of corporate marketing or something like this, when it's, someone giving out what you've found to be true through your research, like giving out false information about a breach. I mean, your best intentions don't always like lead to the best outcome. And I think that, that's something that we've seen over and over. I mentioned like Weave's example where this was public information, like that the phone companies had out there, and, he ended up being prosecuted for it. The WikiLeaks people, over and over again, we see instances of researchers, not getting their just reward. So I think it's something you definitely should, have in the back of your mind if you are going to pursue this kind of research, that you may end up in this sort of situation.
That's probably, I mean, that's surely the reason why, and I think there are right now some regulations, especially in Europe, regarding whistleblowing, where you should be inside an organization. You should be provided with a platform which should guarantee you with some sort of anonymization, to actually talk about unethical behaviors inside an organization, because that's always gonna be a thing, right? The thing that if you're going directly against your own organization, or just a public administration, like in this case, of course you're taking some risks, right? And the thing is that if you want this to do this because of ethical concerns, you should probably do it, and you should not be contained or restrained just because of the fear for the risks, right? And that's the reason why there are out there, inside and outside organizations, ways to try to do something like this anonymously, and that's probably the best case scenario, just to not risk yourself. At the same time, I we can end up with the never-ending story about, is anonymization right or not. You can also use it for malicious purposes and not being affected by any kind of consequences. But we know in the industry that those are just tools, right? Tools are not bad by themselves. They, it depends on the intent of the user when it uses it, right?
Right.
So maybe that's the only thing. Maybe it was not a great choice to be so direct and so public about it. Maybe if they really just wanted to make people aware, they could do something in a more anonymized ways. And I'm sure a security researcher knows or can easily know how to do it, right? You
Right.
think that
But
should have
at the
been the
same
case?
time, I mean, we are not the only people talking about this. This is in the news. His name is there. That's going to be on his resume forever. you know, if you're trying to build a career, you know, it helps. Notoriety.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the thing, right? So once again, I actually agree with the reason why this was done, right? But the consequences of this, right, are very high potentially. Not only with the if they end up, have to pay something to the city, but the thing is, um, I'm not sure just making that statement really changed anything, right? I'm not sure the citizens of Columbus really immediately changed their mind and did something to secure their data after the statement, right? So I'm not sure it was worth it, something like this, just to go against the organization in this case, which is a city. I still think that people should have been aware of this, and there were ways to do it. Nevertheless, probably the risk here were too much. But this is just my personal opinion, and I know multiple people who would have said something slightly different on this kind of topics.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to, continue to monitor this story, see where it goes. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody like EFF, you know, ended up representing him, gratis. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna, see where this goes because, I mean, it does continue. Certainly, I don't feel like it would set a precedent per se because I think we've set this precedent that whistleblowers do tend to, not get rewarded. Um, so, I mean, I think this is another in a long line of perhaps misguided lawsuits, but I'll definitely see where it goes. And, but I mean, it is certainly in the back of my mind that I had not heard of this researcher before. And now he's all over the news. So, especially with the hiring climate we're having here in the US now, anything you can do to make yourself stand out.
It's not great. Not sure. That's actually a good point. That maybe there's some organization out there that could take the defense of the researcher here, and yeah, I think there are actually multiple ones. And depending on how big this becomes, right? If this really spread a little bit outside the city itself, it could be that we will hear a little more about it. And yeah, that's the point. I really like this about this project, this podcast. The thing is that we're just reading a random news, right? But there are some very big implications potentially behind it. And if this continues, if we as an industry spend the time to deep dive on this kind of things a little bit, there's a lot and a ton of learning behind it. Just what kind of changes this lawsuit will potentially give us in the future. We don't know. Maybe nothing, maybe something. But that's the thing. We start from something very, very small, reading a news, and just if you take this news and start discussing with someone else, and maybe publicly, like we're doing right now, that it starts a series of thoughts and processing of those information that go above and beyond the news itself. I don't know if that made sense, but I'm
Yeah,
just
this
in
was a
love with
lot of
this
fun.
project.
I had a lot of fun with this, and I thought, we touched on a lot of interesting topics, not just with the three news articles, but just in general, like topics that I think people should be aware of. We got onto like red teaming versus pen testing versus vuln scan. We got into like security awareness, and we got into a lot of different stuff. So yeah, this was really interesting, and I had a great time. So thank you for having me.
No, it was great to have you. So thank you again. Thank you so much. I always try this. So hear me out. If you watching this, you're liking this episode. So consider subscribing, leaving a like, and leave us a comment. Let me know if you want me to call Georgia once again for another episode in the future. So if I'm convinced if I say this live in an episode, then people will accept the next the next invitation. So wait for it. You will maybe receive another message sooner or later.
Yeah, I'd be glad to do this again anytime. This was a lot of fun.
That's great. Thank you so much, Georgia, one last time, and thank you for everyone watching this. Yep, that was all for today and tonight. So see you on the next episode. Bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye.